Hello everyone, before we get started in today's video, I wanted to take some time to introduce this particular web series as well as talk a little bit about the topic that we're going to be talking about. We are going to be watching and talking about an episode of The Cat Call, which is a web series that has been produced by Mitu and has been created by Kat Lazo, who is a director, writer, and public speaker who works for a wide variety of companies. And The Cat Call is one of her most famous, but far from the only thing on her resume web series. I was very excited to watch this particular episode of The Cat Call, and after I watched it, I thought that they did very well. I can honestly say that. The reason I'm making this video is that there are some things I think that they didn't touch on that if they had touched on would have made the video stronger. And so the purpose of this video is for me to just go in and add some of the things that I think help make the points that they're trying to make a little bit more clear. And I'm interested in seeing how it is that my audience reacts to some of the things that I'm going to say, as well as the audience of The Cat Call itself.
Does anyone have Pepto or something? My stomach is killing me.
What's wrong?
I gave up tacos for Lent. Needless to say, things got a little out of hand yesterday. No more tacos ever again. Ooh, more tacos.
I gave up social media after posting a selfie and writing on my status that I gave up social media.
That's tough. I gave up Netflix and chillin' because it was getting dangerous. Oh no, that's right. Leave him, girl, you deserve better.
What did you give up?
Did you forget it was Ash Wednesday?
No, I'm not Catholic.
What? And you're Latina.
Yes.
You know not all Latinos are Catholic, right?
This is the cat call.
And we're calling this shit out.
Who are you talking to?
What makes us think that all Latinos are Catholic? Well, because historically, a majority of us have been. Catholicism is one of the largest religions practiced among Latinos, with 69% of Latinx adults in Latin America identifying as practicing. So how did the majority of Latinos become Catholic? Short answer, by force. Long answer, I'm gonna need animation for this one. When colonizers invaded various areas of Latin America and the Caribbean, they came with their idea to civilize the indigenous people with their values, ideals, and their God.
It is worth talking about the history of Spain and Portugal at this point before going any further into this video. Spain and Portugal, as they exist now, were territories that were occupied and were fought over by Muslim warlords and by Catholic warlords. And that is an important idea if we're going to understand why it is that the Catholic Church approached Latin America the way that it did. And it's also important if we're going to understand why it is that Latin America and the Catholic Church had a hard time, at the very least for certain parts of their history, tolerating people of different religious beliefs, or at the very least publicizing the fact that these people existed. I'm going to greatly simplify history at this point, which is going to annoy a lot of people, rightfully so. But basically what it is that people need to know is that from the 8th century until the 15th century, both Spain and Portugal, as they now exist, were alternatively under the control of Christians or Muslims, and Christians and Muslims fought each other for great periods of time and at surprisingly great lengths for a lot of this area's history up until about the 15th century. And it was during the 15th century when Spain as it exists now and Portugal as it exists now started to become unified countries that were under Christian control. The Catholic Church's influence on Spanish colonialization was so vast, in fact, that it was the Catholic Church and the Pope who actually decided whether a certain place in Latin America would be colonized by Portugal or by Spain with a treaty that was called the Treaty of Tordesillas. Another key example to illustrate the sort of religious climate that was going on in Spain during the time in which they were beginning colonialization of the New World was that this would begin shortly after the Alhambra Decree, which was the moment in which the Spanish monarchs expelled the Jews out of Spain. And unfortunately, I am summing it up very briefly right now, but that is absolutely an event that anyone who's interested in Spanish history, as well as Jewish history, should know about and should be interested in.
Colonizers stopped at nothing to force Catholicism. They publicly destroyed any images and temples and replaced them with their own cathedrals, monasteries, and schools. Like in Peru, for example, after a battle with the Inca, a church was built on the very site of the fight, erasing the truth of what once was there. And if you think that MC Ricky is persistent at selling you his mixtapes, colonizers took things to a whole nother level.
This right here would have been an awesome moment to dive into the complex casta system as well as the limpieza de sangre systems which existed in Spain and in the New World, and talk about the fact that these systems were originally designed to be ways of exploring how long someone's family has been Christian, and oftentimes what that means is a way of testing whether or not someone should be sent to the New World as a colonizer, or depending on how friendly you're being, as a settler. And these are important concepts for people to understand because they help explain why it is that so many of the people who went to the New World from Spain were people who were often Catholic or were people who were hiding their religions. These are important concepts if we're going to understand why it is that the religious demographics of the Spanish settlers appeared to be the way that they are.
Because folks like Columbus and Hernan Cortez spread the word of God by any means necessary. Yes, this meant violence, enslavement, and lots of war. And when the forced conversions didn't result in murder or people giving in, the mixing of religions and practices came about. Like Santeria, for example, which is a mixture of Catholicism and the Yoruba religion. In order to avoid repercussions for not converting, the Yoruba people disguised some of their indigenous and African roots and customs into Roman Catholicism. So your rosary praying abuela and the santera vecina that she's so scared of, they actually have more in common than you think. Catholic saints and orishas are pretty similar, and why both religions use shrines to worship. Safe to say that Catholicism spread like smallpox, so much so that it gave way to the next leading religion, Christianity.
A lot of different branches of Christianity will say that Catholics aren't Christians, but they'll say so in a derogatory way. So I'm genuinely curious, are there a lot of Catholics who consider Catholicism to be a completely separate religion from Christianity? And also, how many Christians are there out there that genuinely consider Catholics to be part of Christianity? Because without the Catholic Church, Christians lose a lot of their members. The Catholic Church is the single largest denomination of Christianity if you hold to the idea that Catholicism is a part of Christianity and not a separate religion altogether.
Which developed into other branches like Pentecostal, Seventh-day Adventist, just to name a few. But even with Catholicism's popularity, it's important to remember that there are plenty of other Latinos who practice other religions besides Catholicism, like Islam, Judaism, Santeria, and Buddhism. In the US, younger generations of Latinos are seeking other religious practices. Nearly 1 in 4 Hispanic adults are now former Catholics. And sure, many Latinos convert to different religions all the time. But for many Latinos, they never converted and instead just have the history of migration in their ancestry to thank for the religion that they practice. And others? Well, freedom of religion is a thing, right? Which explains how Latinos can believe in anything from Catholicism to nothing at all.
Or how I, Myri, identify as an Afro-Latina Muslim. Today, Latin America has the world's largest Arab population outside of the Arab world. Latin America is home to nearly 30 million people of Arab descent. And the influence can be seen in the Spanish language, like ojalá or almuerzo, or why Colombian artist Shakira or Mexican actress Salma Hayek both have Lebanese heritage as well. The presence of Arab people dates back to the 19th century, when large numbers of Syrians, Lebanese, and Palestinians migrated. And while the vast majority of Arabs were Christian, decades later, several million Arabs in the region are Muslim. Now, Latinos are the fastest growing segment in America's 3.3 million Muslims in the nation, 6% of whom are Latino. So yeah, being Muslim doesn't make me any less Latina, the same way that being Black doesn't either.
Catholicism has had a big impact on our history and culture, like art and traditions like having godparents or communions. And who doesn't like free food at a communion party, or any party for that matter? But regardless if someone was baptized or had a bar mitzvah, neither of them make you less Latino. And if you're in the majority group, it's important to remember that the differences in our Latinidad are what make us that much more interesting. Our differences should be acknowledged and celebrated because they're what make us so unique. And there's always something new to share with one another.
Oh, wow. Man, I wonder who else doesn't know about this.
Huh.
my god, I'll tweet about it.
Excuse me, if I'm not binge watching, you are not tweeting.
That's true, because of Lent.
Lent. Right.
It's lunchtime. We should go to the cute halal spot. The lamb there is delicious.
Oh, I love lamb.
I like lamb too.
Guys, Nick's lamb is meat. So,
that's
Lent.
right.
What about Friday night?
Ooh, try again.
To the salad bar it is.
I love that!
Let's do
Good
it.
idea. I love that. Who is this person?
I work with all of you. I have a show called The Cat Call.
Never heard of it.
No, I don't. I don't know about cats and you.
You're on the show right now.
Never.
I don't know. I don't think so. I'm gonna go.
I'm
Let's
sorry.
go.
Yeah, let's go.
No.
Yeah, you stay here.
That right there is how the video ends, and while I very much enjoyed the video, I think it's important that we go back and we talk about it because it touches on a lot of things very briefly and it doesn't really do them justice. And I'm not really doing some of these same topics justice myself by summarizing them and by making them digestible in video form, but at the same time, I understand where it is that they're coming from. So personally, what I think would have been a really neat idea is if they had divided this video up into more than one video, or if they had made the video a considerably longer video, so that way we could not only talk about certain aspects of religion in Latin America, but we could also talk about what it means to be atheistic in Latin America. And this isn't just me calling for representation. The reality is that it's important that atheists and other non-believers be involved in this conversation, because a lot of the time, the main people who will be demonized when it comes to these sorts of chats within the Latino community are people who are irreligious. And I'm speaking from experience here because I've talked about what it means to be an atheist and a Latin American. I wrote a chapter in a book on the subject, and I myself have a vested interest in helping people have this conversation because I remember what it was like trying to be in Latin spaces while also being atheistic. And that's still something that I'm doing. Although we are getting better at it and we now have a little bit more representation than we did in the past, ultimately, it's still very important that we be included in these conversations. And it's also not fair to the other people who were not included in this conversation as well. People who are Buddhists, people who are pagan, people who are Wiccan, all of whom are people that exist in Latin American spaces. It's my sincere hope that in creating this video, I open up the floor for us as viewers to have a conversation about the cat call and about religion in Latin America, but also I hope that in the future, the cat call revisits the topic of religion and gives spaces for people who are Muslim from Latin America, people who are Jewish from Latin America, and people who are from a wide variety of religious and faith-based communities from Latin America to have conversations themselves, and for us to create content wherein we are some of the people who are writing what's been going on and sharing our experiences and sharing our research, because ultimately I think that would be really fantastic. I definitely think that there are people who are Wiccan and who are pagan and who are Buddhists and who are from a wide variety of religious traditions that exist in Latin America and in the United States and Latin American communities who deserve to go on to shows like this and to talk about our experiences. I hope that in the future, just like how Latino USA has created multiple episodes that talk about religion, so will the Cat Call, because there are a wide range of stories that need to be told and that deserve to be heard from Latin Americans that would definitely be at home in the Cat Call's format, especially as the format becomes more popular and as the Cat Call becomes a more popular and well-known show itself, because the show's episodes have been gradually increasing in length. In the first season, all of the episodes were either 2 or 3 minutes long. In the second season, all the episodes were either 6 or 5 minutes long, and in the third season, the shortest episode was 4 minutes long and the longest episode was 8 minutes long. And I think that's awesome because that gives lots of time for those of us who come from a wide range of faith traditions and of belief systems to talk about our experiences and to talk about how we align and experience being Latino, Latina, Latinx, and being whatever faith system we come from. Kat and the other people behind the Cat Call are very brave for having these conversations and for creating these spaces in media. So I'm hoping that people who watch this video are encouraged to go and check out her other videos, because as I mentioned before, I genuinely really like the Cat Call. I'm just hoping that in the future we can have more diverse conversations and also people who come from a wider range of faith traditions than being Catholic and being Muslim can create create and be on the show at the same time and talk about what it means to be Latino, Latina, Latinx, and also from their faith communities. I know that this has been a longer video, but I want to thank you for sticking with me, and I'm genuinely curious to hear as to what you guys think as to what I've said. So I'm hoping that we can have a wonderful conversation and that you guys can have a fantastic day after watching this video and thinking about all the things I've said, all the things Kat has said, and all the things Myri has said.